All right, good afternoon, everyone. It is January 21st, 2021. So our first SBDM meeting of this calendar year, 2021. The agenda has been posted, communicated to you by email. It's also online here. Does anybody not have access? Anybody need help with accessing that? Okay, it's 3:01 is our official start time here. Kind of, darn it. Let's see. You will spend a minute looking at the minutes from last month. While you're doing that, I'm going to go through and take attendance real fast. If I'm seeing it right, it looks like we're missing Mr. Stutz, Miss Anderson, and Sydney Reynolds. Is that right? All right. Anybody have any questions about the minutes? Motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll make a motion to approve.
Ms. Folliver, anybody have any questions, or do we have consensus? Consensus? All right. Then the minutes for December are approved. Let's see. As I'm doing attendance, I see we have a guest. You want to introduce yourself? Mr. Coben? Mr. Coben, you want to unmute? Hi, okay, gotcha. Mr. Coben's with Courier Journal. Good to have you. Let's see. Racial equity analysis protocol. Who read it? Who read it last time? You all were looking at the minutes. Ms. Schlucher. So who's next up? Mr. Stutz is not here today. So Ms. Swanson, are you okay to read our racial equity assessment protocol at the bottom of our agenda?
Yes, give me 1 second to get back to that. Sorry, I had the last minutes up. Okay, racial equity analysis protocol. What is the overarching purpose of the policy, procedure, or practice? Which racial, gender, or other groups could be inequitably affected by this policy, procedure, or practice, and how? Which racial, gender, or other groups will have the most concerns with this policy, procedure, or practice? Why? What unintended consequences could result from the policy, procedure, or practice, such as racial or gender inequities? Have stakeholders, particularly those most impacted by this decision, been meaningfully informed or involved in the discussion of the policy, procedure, or practice? What was the feedback? What factors may be producing and perpetuating inequities associated with this issue? Does this policy, procedure, or practice deepen these inequities or improve them? Is the policy, procedures, or practice resourced to guarantee full implementation and monitoring? Who, such as an individual or group, is the main driver for improving equity for this particular policy, procedure, or practice?
Great, thank you. And we use these for our decision making, but as well as our policy review, which hopefully we'll get to at the end of the agenda. We started a policy review back in November on policy 602 and 603. We ran into some questions. We wanted some district models for those policies, as well as some content of the policy we wanted clarification on. And then we didn't have time to look at it in December. So we'll revisit that at the end of this meeting. Individuals wishing to address council. Anybody, any of our students or Mr. Coben, if you're interested. All right, SBDM training update. From what I see, it looks like all members have completed their training. Congratulations. If I just my review of my report, it appears to be you've submitted everything to me, so I appreciate it. Even our newest member got trained quick and fast. Thank you very much. So, and then I know our two Sydneys, Sydney Calvin and Sydney Reynolds, made the training for our student representatives. Now officially, I'll give you an update on what that status is for our student representatives. The approval of the KDE alternative model request. And then for Damon and who else missed it? Gavin, did you all get the link to that video? It's about half an hour long, so you can get yourself caught up with that stuff. Those two, gotcha. Gavin, did you get it as well? The link to that training.
Yeah, but I couldn't view the video. I tried to use the passcode that was in the email to access the video.
Okay.
It kept coming back with an error.
Okay, just reply back to Miss Stinton with Dr. Stinton, and we'll see what we can do to get it for you. I think she wanted to be careful because student names were in part of it, so it needed to be it had to be have a security code on it. New business, school budget due to NTI. I just wanted to, I will talk deeper about it in the actual financial report, but I wanted to give first kind of the big picture discussion about what's going on. So we've spent, since we last met in December, there's not been a lot of school days, and we've actually only spent $2,000 or $3,000. We're saving, I would say we're saving generally around $10,000 per month on normal operational costs. And so that over the course of this year has really been adding up and will continue to add up. We also have been with some staffing changes that have happened during this NTI process. We're in a surplus of staffing as well from staffing allocations that can convert into operational budget money. So the big picture is we're sitting on several $100,000 of funds that we can reinvest back into the school. And when we get into that financial report, I'll talk about, based on my conversations with the instructional leadership team, as well as the overall technology needs and facility needs of our school, where we can start investing those funds back into our school. And what I'm asking for an endorsement on as far as moving the necessary funds as needed to the right codes when we're ready to make those purchases. But that's kind of, I just wanted to mention that from a big picture standpoint under new business, because we are talking about a significant amount of money here that we are all responsible for. And you know me, I like to get into the spreadsheets and the nitty gritty, and I've got the line items there for you hyperlinked later when we talk about the budget report. So that's what I wanted to mention is new business. The other part is our master scheduling. We're already preparing for next school year. So, we're already talking and thinking through what type of courses are we offering? What do we need to do to make sure that we're properly advising students for next year? How do we encourage and motivate students to take the courses that are most challenging and appropriate for them in preparation for their whatever they want to do after high school? So, Sarah, I'll turn it over to you as our lead counselor to talk. I know several of our teachers know this, but I guess the big picture of what does our master scheduling process look like at this phase where we're at?
So currently at this point in the year, the big focus is on updating our master scheduling booklet so that it's accurate and reflects all of the potential offerings for the following year. That booklet gets formulated based on feedback from all of the parties who are involved. So making sure that like CTE and IB and College Board AP information is up to date, that the graduation requirements are up to date, because this is the document that we give out to our students and that is open for the public as well to see. So we want to make sure that each year we're updating that appropriately. We are also talking with departments and teachers, any new course offerings that want to be discussed. This is the time that would be occurring right now. I know our social studies department this year is interested in discussing some additional options, some additional elective options for next year. So that's in discussion. And then as we are also formulating that scheduling book, we are focusing on how to advertise, if you will, to students. So counselors and Ms. Beckley are looking at how to get information out to students about IB. So they are creating promotional information to target students so that they are aware of what options are available to them. And then we're also working with our academy coach, Mr. Chandler, in order to make sure that the information about CTE is updated and relevant. And that is also being pushed out to our current freshmen who will be sophomores. And they're spending essentially the month of February exploring what Atherton has to offer. And then I go in as a freshman counselor, develop a 4-year plan with them. So they're not just thinking about next year, but they're thinking about their whole high school experience as they're moving forward and what they can get out of high school.
So we're being intentional about promoting College Board AP and IB coursework for students who wish to have that experience and background. Our Academy Career Technical Education course offerings, and making sure that, as Ms. Will said, students are thinking about their whole high school career and not just 1 year at a time, because how they fit in these different courses they're interested in is very important, so that they don't reach their junior year and because they took something that they were desiring to take something their senior year, but because they hadn't taken something else by their junior year, they're losing space because they only get seven classes per year. So talking about our world languages, our arts, our CTE Academy courses, our AP and IB courses, their overall options as far as the classes they want to take over their 4 years at Atherton. I'll pause there, and do you all have any questions for Ms. Uhl, for myself, about the scheduling process or scheduling in general?
I think one thing or one issue that is most common around, because I'm currently on track to be full IB or get the IB diploma, but I think one sort of central issue that a lot of the IB diploma candidates have is sort of a lack of, I don't know, there isn't really much leeway in what classes you can take. Like there's no variety really in the topics. And I know there's other IB classes out there, but it seems pretty much like, well, maybe if we can get additional higher level classes or some more like single year standard level classes, that we might be able to pull in or attract more people to sort of take up the program, because a lot of people don't want to have to take these extremely difficult classes and a lot of topics that they're just not interested in. So if we expand sort of the scope or range of topics that are being taught at the IB level, then maybe more IB diploma candidates will come, or more people will choose that path.
Thank you, Gavin. Yeah, I can tell you that's something that's been a very intentional concern and goal of ours over the last 3 years. Ms. Beckley, how many IB classes have we added in the last 3 years?
We've added chemistry, psychology, film, another math SL, and a math HL.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just in the past two years. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Spanish HL.
Spanish HL. Yep.
Yeah. And we're always looking to see what can we fit in, like what do we have the capacity to be able to offer, and then what are students interested in. Gavin, I think it's a good point. We used to offer IB art and IB theater, and what we found was that we offered them for a year. They were so theoretical as opposed to the actual practice of those arts that it wasn't very much of a high interest for students after we really dug into the curriculum. But as we continue to look at what type of IB courses are available out there that'll make that level of curriculum available to any student, not just our diploma candidates. But you're right, our diploma candidates are the ones with the tightest schedule as far as the sequencing of everything and what courses, being most careful about what courses they take so that they can earn that very prestigious and distinguished title. Any other questions, comments, feedback on scheduling? Hey, Gavin, just before I leave that, so that I don't leave it totally as an open-ended, we are interested in understanding what students are interested in, like, and Ms. Beckley, maybe that's something we could start doing every other year or so, like doing a survey of students to find out, here are other IB electives that are available, like in the curriculum-wise, and like what might be of interest that we just hadn't considered. And then when we find where maybe, even if it's a course that's only offered every other year or something, make it more available for students. So, yeah. All right, thank you. School improvement report. I asked our academic instructional coach, Mr. Stevens, to present some academic data. Now, we have to be honest with you. We've not done testing in any way since March of last year. And the junior ACT was administered to the day before it was announced that we wouldn't be returning to school for a while. And that had been the last time since we were in person. So Mr. Stevens has put the link to his display here in the chat. And Mr. Stevens, do you want me to turn this over to you so that you can screen share?
Yeah.
Let's see.
So you have the link to the presentation I'm about to share that you can look through at your own pace, and then I'll walk you through what's in there as well.
So before, while you're getting ready for that, Tyler, I wanted to say to everyone, we as a council have a responsibility to keep student success and student achievement at the forefront of our purpose as a leadership body here. And even though from a state accountability standpoint, they look at certain data points. We know that student achievement takes place in many different forms, but also want to emphasize we do have that responsibility to be sharing with sharing our data that we have with our council. And then as we think of other data that we need to be exploring, to be looking at student achievement and what we can do to support the achievement of our students in other ways beyond data points that may be displayed here today or into the future. We look at it in many different ways. So just keeping that in the purpose of our presentation on this student achievement data set is looking at a particular set of data and seeing how we can learn and grow from it, and what are we doing well and what can we improve upon. I don't think I stole any of your thunder there, did I, Tyler?
No. Yeah, I would just reiterate those points. You know, when we look at assessment data, you know, it's just one piece of the puzzle, and that there's a tremendous amount of information that we need to account for when understanding improvement needs and what we need to do to support students. And I also want to emphasize too that, you know, behind each data point is a human being, and that, you know, decisions that are informed by assessment data need to account for that person's dignity, and ensuring that their intellectual and developmental well-being are taken into account when we're considering the data. So, you know, bringing that sense of respect to looking at assessment data. All right. The first set of data we'll be looking at is the ACT Council of Post-Secondary Education benchmark trends. The reason we look at this data specifically is because when students meet the minimum benchmarks on ACT as designated by the Council for Post-Secondary Education, they then qualify to begin taking credit-bearing courses when they enter college, especially at public universities in Kentucky. If they miss those benchmarks, there is a chance that they may be enrolled in developmental or co-requisite coursework for which they will not receive college credit. However, you know, ACT is just the first step in addressing those benchmarks. We have a test too called the Coyote, which we administer to students when we are able to be in buildings that helps them meet those benchmarks as well. But for the purposes of today, we're looking at the ACT data related to those benchmarks. So here we have a 3-year trend. The benchmarks are at the top there. It's the English assessment for the ACT is 18, math 19, and reading 20. You can see overall as a school, our trends have remained relatively steady with a slight gain there in mathematics. Keeping in alignment with racial equity and considering the unique needs of all of our students, the breakout you see here provides the percentage of students meeting those benchmarks by demographic group. And the students who identify as 2 or more races, the reason you don't see any for class of 19 is because we had fewer than 10 students when that data was reported, and it was not available through the school report card. But you can see here across that we've had some gains, and then some areas where we've had some drops, and this is for the English, ACT English assessment. Reading benchmarks, similar. You see some gains, some drops across the demographic groups. But I do want to emphasize too, looking at the demographic data, this information helps us to ensure that we provide targeted supports to students, especially with additional ACT assessments, as well as taking the Coyote assessment, making sure that they receive the educational support from a teacher to get the content that they need to meet those benchmarks. And the trends for mathematics look similar as well. Some gains, some drops. The next set of data we're going to look at is for the class of 2023. It was from the most recent administration of the NWEA MAP assessment. Class of 2023 were freshmen last year. They are currently sophomores. So what is the MAP growth assessment? It is something that is used district-wide when we are in person. And I believe it goes from grades 3 through 11, although we did it, I think they changed some things around grade 11 for the future, we'll see. But the MAP growth, it's an adaptive test. And what that means is that a student, as they answer a question, if they get it correct, the questions increase in difficulty. If they answer the question incorrectly, the questions will get easier. And basically what it does is give us an overview of generally what a student knows in alignment with the MAP is specifically aligned to Common Core state standards, as well as Kentucky standards. It's also untimed. The main scale that they use in MAP is called RIT. I think it's just important to understand the name, kind of what we're looking at here. That stands for the Rasch Unit Scale. Essentially what it allows us to do is make comparisons across years and across students using a common scale so that the scores remain stable and we can say like, okay, like we can see growth over time for that student regardless of the assessment items they may have seen or when they took the assessment. The assessment is normed nationally every 5 years. The last time they normed it was 2015. I think they'll have some new norms coming out soon. I don't know how that's been affected by the pandemic. So what we see here then is for our junior class, we're looking at, or excuse me, our freshmen last year who are now sophomores, the class of 2023. This is their most recent assessment data. From fall to winter, the fall to winter interval last year, you can see that there are slight gain overall and overall average RIT. Next to that is the national norm in the gray there, and then the JCPS mean RIT for that interval as well. And at Atherton, you can see that we're performing pretty well on average against the national norms and the district mean. For the class of 2023, the average mathematics RITs across demographic groups increased. So that was some nice growth there, which we might infer or attribute to the outstanding supports provided within our freshman academy, especially. Before I dig into the reading assessment data, I think it's always important to just understand what a reading assessment does, especially a skills-based standardized reading assessment. They sample a variety of topics and a variety of subject knowledge across a broad range of subjects. So it's not just about the instruction that you're receiving in your language arts course, it's also about the instruction and the knowledge and skills that students are gaining through all their content area courses, and including the arts or anything that the student's taking at the school. So all of that feeds into the ability or into general reading ability. A good example of a knowledge-rich curriculum that will improve general reading ability is the International Baccalaureate curriculum. So for the class of 2023, again, you can see in the fall to winter interval overall, we're performing above the national norm as well as the JCPS mean. And we also saw some growth there. Now, because it was a fall to winter interval, you're not going to see as much growth as you would for let's say, fall to spring, or from fall to fall, once we've had students for a year or multiple years, and they've been through that rich international baccalaureate informed curriculum. So these students, we only had half a year when they took their second assessment before we never got to the spring assessment. So for reading, again, you can see that the trends are positive, even though it was only half a year for the class of 2023. And then we can also get a calculation of from the NWEA reports of how students are performing against grade level norms. And this gives you a sense of that. What this also allows teachers to do at an individual student level, realizing that, when we're looking at overall data, we have to start to boil it down to the individual student level. So those reports allow the teachers, when we see that students may need some additional support, to identify what they need to do within the curriculum to help that student, to accelerate them toward grade level expectations. The next set of data that we'll look at is for our current juniors who were sophomores last year. And for them, we have a nice full year, a whole year's worth of data that we can look at. So it gives us a better idea, I guess, of like how they're growing throughout their experience at Atherton, and a more longitudinal look. Overall, again, for mathematics, for our class of 2022, you can see some very positive growth there. And what's interesting is that we can get a sense of how our students nationally, because the NWEA map is administered to thousands of students across the nation, how do they rank? So we get a good sense of overall percentile rank, how our students are performing against students across the nation. And the good thing that you can see here is that our students' percentile ranks go up the longer that they're with us in general. The reading assessment data is similar. The longer we have students experiencing the rich curriculum at our school, the more we see those trends go upward. And so there was some nice growth there for map reading for the class of 2022. And again, their percentile ranks nationally, and how they're improving and performing. Because we have a lot of very high performing students at our school, you're not gonna see, like when you're up in the 90s there, you're not gonna see huge percentile rank jumps. Okay. And that is just an overview of some of the data pieces we look at. We look at a lot of data. Dr. Aberly, when he and I spoke about this, he has to really kind of help me focus in on what's going to be meaningful to share with various stakeholders, because we look at a whole range and quite a wide variety of data to inform improvement decision making at our school, and discussions like you have here in the SBDM. I appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Mr. Stevens, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you have any, obviously, none of us know what the implications are fully going to be, but are you getting any data or seeing any feedback as far as what to expect the fallout from NTI may be in regards to some of these testing scores when we're able to kind of get things back to whatever the new norm is going to be, and to understand when we may be able to start testing? Are you getting any feedback from peers or other organizations that may indicate what what to expect as far as student testing when students do return to, again, I hate to use the term, but I guess the new norm of a schedule?
I think the best, like I've seen, there are some studies. So NWEA last spring produced a study where they tried to estimate learning loss as a result of students not participating in, regular building-based instruction, knowing that virtual instruction it's never going to replace having a high-quality teacher in a classroom with a student. That interpersonal interaction is so critical. The initial study suggested that there would be some pretty significant learning loss, but primarily at the elementary level, where you tend to see more volatility and gains and losses, because high school students have a cumulative educational experience when they get to high school, that's lasted 10 years or so, that you don't see as much volatility in the learning loss there. Now they produced a new report. I can't give you exact numbers, but they're not anticipating it as being as bad as they initially thought, or that the drops wouldn't be as bad as they originally estimated. But the big thing that I've seen in those reports is that they emphasize, once students are back in the building, ensuring that they are engaged in a rigorous core curriculum, much like we have with the IB informed curriculum that we provide. That is going to be the most critical aspect in terms of ensuring that students get back on track to where they would need to be.
Perfect, thank you.
I think it's a great question. A lot of complexity behind that has to do with what you're actually measuring too. And in the case of MAP and ACT, these are national normed assessments. MAP can be thought of the same way. So it's the experience that's happening with students with potential education impact is affecting everyone, right? Not just our school. So using these types of assessments will give us an idea of where do we need to, as students are coming to us from 8th grade to 9th grade, at using this type of data to understand where that learning gap may be existing that we can bolster up throughout the coming years, as well as just kind of recognizing that with the ACT and other college placement assessments, that the whole world's experiencing it the same way. So it's going to be interesting to see how what is that impact on the national norm, on the normal curve. What kind of impact will that have? So. And Tyler said it, but I'm going to reemphasize it. He closed with having good quality core instruction. So that's okay, Gavin. We'll see you. So, we call it tier 1, like the foundation. And, that's what I'm so proud about with our school, is that we have such strong quality tier 1. And we have a lot of focus on that. We have focus on additional supports for students who are struggling, but having that quality, a foundational experience for students, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's in a virtual way, is what makes the big difference. I mean, those scores that you're seeing, seeing those type of national percentiles, as you all are probably aware through the news that I've shared, it's in my every email signature I have. We are ranked very high among Kentucky. I think it's right now we're 7th in Kentucky among 250-ish public high schools. We've been recognized for our achievement of our students in many different ways. When you look at it, when you disaggregate that data out, we're having a greater value added effect for our students coming to us, and the impact they have over the 3 to 4 years that we have them here. So something where I'm very proud of our staff, that there's not a single staff member here that takes our job lightly. And we have so many of our staff, including myself, that have our children who attend courses here for that reason. Sandra?
Sorry, I needed to unmute myself. Out of curiosity, I don't know if Mr. Stevens mentioned this or not. So for this school year, how will we compare the data? Will that be compared to last school year? Because I don't think you did any map testing in the fall. Is that correct? So will it be compared to whatever the kids then take in the spring?
Tyler, you
Or
can
how
answer
will it
that the
compare?
best way. Yeah.
Well, we'll just have a comparison of whatever map assessment we have that's most recent for those particular students.
Okay.
So I don't know if we'll test in the spring. That hasn't been determined yet. So it could be that we have the most recent data to try to understand how they're growing would be, over a year old. So we'll just have to go with what we have.
Any other questions for Mr. Stevens before we let him go? All right, well, thanks, sir. Appreciate all you do. Let's see. Staffing report. We still have not received a notification on our ECE implementation coach, which we submitted the name a couple months ago. There's been a hold up on that because of a district procedure not wanting to leave a classroom full of kids without a teacher. So our counselors, particularly Ms. White and our other counselors, have been pulling up the slack in the absence of an ECE implementation coach. And I sent out as recently as before this meeting another email asking on the status of that. But we've submitted the name that I've mentioned before regarding this position, filling this position, someone who has experience in that position and is currently serving in an ECE teacher role at another JCPS school. So we're waiting and seeing on that. Now, another situation we had is a teacher who resigned in December. We advertised for the position. We were unable to fill it. And therefore, we managed internally the covering of those classes, it was for a Spanish position. We had those classes covered internally. But that leaves us with a vacancy for the rest of this year, which we can then cash in and reallocate those funds. Not that we were in a real great need for more money, but the more funding that we have, the more we can invest in Chromebooks. And that's what I would say that I would recommend. We put this money in a code for technology hardware to increase our overall technology resources available in the school. And I'll talk about that a little bit more at the financial in the next section, which is the budget. But hyperlinked in the agenda is the section 4 and 5 change form that you all have seen before. We signed it just last month as well. And this is for a half of a teacher position. Again, this position is vacant. And it's my full intent and promise that we are not cutting back in our staffing for next year. It's just we were unable to fill the position for the current school year. So selling this position will not leave us in a position of not having it for next school year. So my request is that we get a consensus and approval for a digital signature on this section 4 and 5 change form that is posted in your agenda under section 7B to redeem the 0.5 teacher allocation and put that funding into technology related hardware to increase our total Chromebook allocations. Unless there's a question, I just need a motion.
Motion. To
Sandra and Shannon hit it at the same time.
Yep.
Any questions before we come to consensus on this? All right, then I'm officially recording. We've digitally approved the section 4 and 5 change form for that position. There's some writing in that particular form because there's some finagling that has to happen because of the way the budget code is listed, and I can take care of that with our accountants, so to speak.
I was going to ask about that because I was going to say I don't see anything typed on it yet, so it's going to be written later.
Oh, you don't see that? Is it blank?
It was for me, unless I clicked on something wrong.
I might
It
not.
was blank. It was blank, but sometimes it does that when you convert a Word document into a PDF through Google Docs. It sometimes does that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. I will follow up in an email with you all with the actual document itself. Okay. It's the document says it's a 0.5 teacher, which is $33,050, and moving that to the technology related hardware. We did the same thing last month, but I will send it to you. Yeah, you're right. It didn't convert. So I'll send that to you by email before sending it. All right. Part C, financial priorities and budget report. Provides you the line item balances for January. There wasn't a lot of changes compared to December. I just noted that a couple of the most significant expenditures we had in December were, we spent like a total of just under $2,000. It was for lockdown shades. These are shades that have been approved by use in the district, and it's going to there'll be shades that we can easily pull down and cover all the windows, all the classroom windows, instead of what we currently do, which is having taped pieces of paper and poster that can move over the window. They really weren't that expensive. There's just so many of them. So $2,000 was actually a good price. And then
You're talking about for the classroom doors, right? The window inside of the door.
Yeah, that long vertical window. Yep. Not the exterior window. And then the $1,500 on library books. It's a I'm blanking out on the name of Library Guild. So it's an annual thing that we do where through the Library Guild, they give you kind of the newest young adult novels and stuff like that. So that leaves us right now with just over $300,000 in our operational budget. We will spend maybe 50,000 of that by the end of the year, maximum. I wouldn't even think probably not even that much if we return even before spring break, like Dr. Polio said would be the best case scenario. So that'll leave us with nearly $250,000 of additional funding that we can reinvest back in the school. What I would like to propose are the following, and what I'm asking is, if everyone's okay with it, then based on these general estimate amounts, when we are ready to process a purchase order, then I already have the SBDM's endorsement to move that quantity of money to the proper code. It's not always easy to know what code to move it to. Otherwise, I could just line item it all out for you. And I could always create like a live Google sheet for you if you really wanted to see how all that worked. But main thing is, if we're moving $50,000, you need to know what it's for, because we're responsible for monitoring that magnitude of money. So just looking at, I'll see if I can, if you're looking at the agenda, I have it listed out, and I'll just go by the agenda items. Chromebooks. So a Chromebook cart is just over $9,000. I went ahead and rounded it up to $10,000 just because I prefer to do high estimates and the number comes in below what we approved as a council than the other way around. So if you round it up to about $10,000 per Chromebook cart, so that it's a $1,000 cart, like the actual physical cart, and then there's 30 Chromebooks that cost about $275 a piece that go in it. Plus there's the power cords and the zip ties and everything that we do to kind of like make it a usable resource for teachers and for classrooms and moving around. So about $10,000 per cart. We have received our annual technology allocation, which is not part of our general budget that we manage, will get us about 2 of those carts. What I would like to say is, with the money that we have, let's make a commitment to purchase 8 more carts at around 80,000. It'll probably come in less than that, more like 75 or something like that. But if we commit to $80,000 to purchase 8 more Chromebook carts, plus the 2 that we're getting through our annual KETS funding, that'll double our total Chromebook inventory versus what we currently have, or what we had at the end of when we left school last school year. So I think it's a pretty big commitment on our part as an SBDM, and we're in a financial position to be doing that, to be doubling our technology Chromebook inventory. But it's I wanted to get approval from you all to make that type of expenditure before taking any action. And what I'll do is I'll wait till the end. How about that? Because when we're talking about large numbers here, we may want to, if you see them all at one time, it makes more sense kind of what's okay and what's more extreme or not. That's the largest one at 80,000. Student deaths, I went through during winter break at every classroom, and there are 14 classrooms that still have student desks that are 10 years old or more. They're not in horrible shape. We got rid of all the stuff that's in really bad shape, but some classes will have blue desks. Some classes have desks that have like a folding arm to it and stuff. It would cost us around $50,000 to replace all 10-year-old desks and older with the nice larger adult size. I say adult size. They're made for large students. They're not kind of like the elementary school or middle school version, mid-size versions of these desks. And they're all flat tops so that you can push them together for collaboration. That's been something we've been very consistent about in the purchasing of our new desks. But if considering we have nearly 70 classrooms in the building, only needing 14 classrooms worth, I think is a really showing that we've been investing in this for a long time. But that'll run us around $50,000 to get all new desks and get rid of all the old ones. Just, purge them. Our poor maintenance man that's one thing he's been constantly doing, is constantly fixing broken desks that are old. And he's done a wonderful job keeping them alive as long as they have. But I think it's a time to replace them. I asked our instructional leadership team, what are some wish list things that we could do to support your department? And there are several things, but the big ones right now are graphing calculators for our math department. It costs about $4,000 to have a whole new set of TI-84 pluses in a classroom, and these are the classroom versions of them. They asked for 3 classroom sets of that to get us fully up to speed. And then our English department asked for a set of a variety of different novels so that we can be ready for novel distribution to our students when we return in person. You'll see, kind of wrapping up a couple things there, Academy signage. The district, we're coordinating with the district to have signage, meaning signs and painting and wall stickers. I don't know exactly what they're called. They're essentially stickers, but they go on the wall and they kind of indicate engineering academy area, health science, and all that kind of stuff. if we commit 10,000, the district commits 10,000, and then that goes into a fund to take care of the promotion of our academies, both within the facility and inside those actual classrooms themselves. And then finally, something else I was working on during winter break is we're running out of office space. Our school's gotten so big, we're adding more staff over the last 2 years, and we've just run out of offices. So we cleared out some storage areas, some former storage areas, and we need to build some walls in there to make it some kind of a nice administrative look. And we invest about $7,000 in order to accomplish that. I'm going to pause there for a minute and see if anyone has any questions or elaboration on anything that I've mentioned, or a question about something I haven't mentioned. Mr. Reinhardt? You're not coming through. You're unmuted, but you're not coming through. Yeah, you want to go out and come back in, or you just want to type it in the chat? Okay. Does anybody else have a question while he's typing it in? Mr. Davis?
Yeah, sure. Is the budget issue completely separate from the money that is being collected for the seniors' graduation?
Yes, that's a great question. So whenever you do fundraising, that money goes into a school activity account. So that's, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it real money. Like it's actually cash money. So that's managed through a bank account that is, we have an account with well, not Stockyards. I'm blanking out. It'll come to me in a minute. Republic Bank. So that type of money, the fundraising, donations, athletics, all that stuff's managed in a central bank account, a bank account. This money, operational budget, these are funds that are given to the district by the state, given to the school by the district. That's all managed at the district level. That's under what's called a munis account. So those are two totally separate funds, and the type of funding that so the money that we're given for our operational budget must be spent on the school at large, on instructional, for instructional purposes. So the type of money we collect through fundraising is meant to target specific groups of students for their welfare. So that's what the senior fundraising request that was made. That's all going to go into account that can only be spent for that purpose. So it's protected money, and by Red Book procedures can only be spent on that class of students. So those two monies don't intermingle.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. That's something I talk about with our PTSO a lot too. When they're asking, what can we do? What can we do with PTSO money to help you all out? I tell them, I can't, if I wanted to give the teachers a mug, right? A coffee mug that said Atherton on it or something, I can't do that with any state funding, any of the funding that we manage here. That has to be done through fundraising for adult purposes. We're not allowed to raise money for adults. We can only raise it for kids. Therefore, the PTSO would have to purchase things like that. The kids can raise money for themselves for things like prom, graduation, senior swag. Last year for our seniors, we bought them all special graduation pictures. So we used the pictures that they had taken at the studio. And then we did a special senior photo that was given to them during graduation. We also had some sunglasses and some other things that we were able to buy for them with their leftover funds. All right, you got something in the chat there, Matt? Yeah, Good question. So at this time, we are not being told that that there's going to be any social distancing expectations upon return to school. So that is the information that I've received up to this point. To be honest with you, I just don't have a clear answer on what will a return to school safety plan look like in the way of health code expectations. We were originally talking about 50% of the kids coming back to school on Monday and Tuesday, and then 50% coming back Thursday and Friday. I've not heard that as the continued expectation once vaccinations roll out, although the vaccinations are only for the staff and not for the students. So in all honesty, I'm not in a position to really give any clearer information than what you're getting on a weekly basis through JCPS communications on those. So
JCTA sent an email out today. Didn't have any new information, but they linked those back to school plans that everybody wrote in October, and all of that's still the same, and it still states in those documents that students need to be 6 feet apart. And you know, that was linked under the district guidelines for students.
I'm just telling you what I heard. So that's interesting. It doesn't appear to be two consistent messages then being shared.
Same thing. I mean, what Ms. Lucher was talking about, it's in there. It also states again that all CDC guidelines will be followed, which includes the social distancing of 6 feet apart for indoor spaces. So that's part of the problem for parents and us, generally speaking, is the discrepancy between information.
I really can't help with that, and that's beyond the agenda item for the SBDM. Sorry, I can't really elaborate any further on this. So back to our agenda. Do we have any questions before I ask for the consensus endorsement to spend the funds that I've just described that are listed under section 7C as we're in a position to move money to pay for desks, for office dividers, for the English novels, for the graphing calculators, and for the Chromebooks and Chromebook parts?
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So I know it's listed under building modification needs. We've been talking about the projectors. So is that going to be paid for with a different account that wouldn't be applied to the money that we've been discussing?
That's a separate issue, but so the reason I put projectors in there was because we're having old projectors become obsolete and we have to replace them with new ones. We are not in a position to be buying any right now. We're assessing what the age, which ones of those projectors are aging out, and estimating what that cost will be to replace it. It would be the same pool of money as the rest of this, though.
So we're not looking to purchase those yet. We're just coming up with the plan of like the logistics of how that would happen.
Correct. Yep. Motion to approve the request, anybody?
Motion to approve.
Tessa, Ull, and Anitria triple teamed it. All right.
Yep.
Any further discussion before we have consensus? So just to confirm on video here, what we're confirming is that as we're in a position to be ordering the stuff that I've described here, that it's okay to move the funds into the proper account. And this council meeting was that meeting for that approval. All right. And then finally, as Ms. Slusher was saying, that under building modification needs, that's more, that category is like the long-term projection of things that we're wanting to accomplish as well. And so I wanted to keep a kind of a running list of, here are the things that we're trying to accomplish in the building. As they become a reality, as we understand what we get approval to buy, what we get approval to replace, I come before you all with actual numbers and start getting that processed. And yes, I added in, I added into that list that hasn't been on there before, the lighting renovation. There's 21 classrooms that still have what I call the ice tray slatted lights, and they are definitely yellow compared to all the other rooms. Like, you can look in one of those rooms and see that you get that tinge of yellow on all the paper and on all the surfaces, and it's, when you look to another classroom, it's just bright white. So my goal is to try to get all those replaced. I think it's going to probably run just a few $1,000s per room, but I'm just waiting to, I have to get a building mod even generally endorsed in order to get an estimate of what that scope of project may look like. That's not going to happen anytime in the very near future, but maybe before next school year. And then finally, the instructional display projectors, as I already explained, they're reaching end of life spans. Some of them are 10 years old now, and as they're dying, we just have to replace them. We can't buy new bulbs and stuff. So those run about $1,000 a piece. All right, it's 4:08, and I would really like us to get into that policy review that we haven't been getting to, but let me talk about school mascot update. So as a way to get organized and oriented around a process for the selection of a new school mascot, I reached out to our alumni association as well as our staff who are alumni, who are Atherton alumni, and we've kind of formed like a preliminary core team of people who are talking through the best way to approach this process. So before we have too much, have that committee grow too big too fast, what we're trying to do is, by using our last meeting, we had 3 of our Atherton teachers who are also alumni, and we've had 2 alumni from the past, including the former Atherton Alumni Association president and myself, who've been meeting to talk through, like, what do we want this process to look like? How do we want to involve our student, staff, and our alumni in the process? And what are the next steps each time? And we've met about either 3 or 4 times now, I think 4 times. And in the last one, we brought in a PR consultant with a firm, Verizon. It's not Verizon cell phone. It's another Verizon firm who gave us some consultation on the PR process and what we've been doing. So as you all may know, we've sent out a survey to get more like to create a framework for our thinking and our direction of this process, where we ask for our students, staff, parents, and alumni to provide us feedback on, tell us what Atherton has meant to you. What, when you think of Atherton, what are the core values? And what we're doing is we're coming back together again next week to kind of nail down that framework for our core values as a team. And then we're going to be soliciting, we had a pretty low response rate from our students. So we're going to reach out directly to our current students with some more specific questions to direct the next steps in the mascot process. And then we're going to do focus groups. So we'll be talking with our SBDM council, with our PTSO, with our our class officers of all grade levels, where we're talking through the information that we've had and getting some guidance and direction on the process of identifying and selecting a school mascot. So it's only January, so I feel like we're making really good time with it. It sounds maybe slow and cumbersome, but we're wanting to do it well and do it right, so that whatever the selection that is made, whatever that looks like, it's something that endures beyond this current administration, endures decades into the future. I don't know if anybody had any questions that I might be able to answer on that. That's kind of we're still at the big picture phase of the mascot. I just wanted to share that with you all. Also wanted to share that we're being very specific. We talked in our last meeting about using this SBDM council as a focus group as we reach a point about moving forward in the process, as well as reaching out directly to students in focus groups, both surveying all our students as well as doing focus groups to say, here's what the feedback we're getting. What are your thoughts on this? Here's what we're thinking. Is that, can you tell us how you feel about this process? So pause there for any questions. Kind of already addressed it in NTI update. The answer is we don't have a return to school date and we don't have a return to school plan as of right now. So I watch the news as much as anybody else does, and I get the JCPS communications. And when we actually get a return to school date, then we're going to take action on it based on the information we're given at that time. Just so it doesn't get pushed off, I'm going to skip to item D real quick and just let you know that the Jefferson County Board of Education did approve the alternative model for the SBDM Council to have 4 student representatives. This now goes before the Kentucky Department of Education Board, and their next meeting is in April. So hopefully we'll hear by our April meeting what the answer is, and it'll be official. Until then, our official model is that we have 2 student representatives on as part of our council. We never actually identified 2. We identified 4 people, students that have been invited to be part of these meetings as we're awaiting approval for the alternative model. All right, y'all want to spend 15 minutes? We'll dig into 602 and 603, or are you totally burnt? Got the energy? Let's do it. All right. So policy review. If you are, if you're in the agenda, the policy review is the actual policies right now. And then the district examples are hyperlinked in there. And one of our questions as we were pulling these up was, what is this thing called the materials review? Give me just a second. I clicked on something and I have to wait for it to pull up. The JCPS selection of materials. So that I found it, I got it, and provided it in there. Basically, whenever we order stuff, it has to go through proper procedure. Just like the question earlier about, money, there's guidelines, there's law and guidelines that regulate those things. And this is one of those where I don't deal with that particular document, but the rules that we follow have to align with it. So anything that I do has to get approved through that process. So, so we're on 602. Selection of materials. Y'all remember where we left off in November? I guess we might as well just start over with it because I remember we read it, we discussed it, we didn't know what the selection of instructional materials was, and then we wondered, when we look at it through an equity lens, is there something else that we can be adding here to emphasize that? Is that a general statement that we have under our equity policy, which is back up in the our equity policy, which is policy 2, that would be all encompassing for all policies. So that's when we said, well, why don't we see what a district example looks like? And that's what I provided in the hyperlinked agenda there, the district example. So I'm going to leave that open now for, I feel like I've been talking a long time. I'm going to leave it open for discussion about, do we keep our policy as is? Do we revise it based on any of the information that we've received and discussed? Did I hyperlink them backwards? Did I do 602 and 603 backwards? Okay, that's why it's, yeah. Sorry about that. So the district example of 602 is pretty beefy, but I don't know that it, like these are general, like these apply generally to elementary, middle, and high. I mean, is there anything in there about equity that, because that was the main concern I think that we were talking about, is like, is there an example?
There is, it's like the 1, 2, 3, 4th line down. There's a semicolon, and then it says all instructional materials should be reviewed for bias and cultural responsivity. It's a weird word.
Let's see, in the very first paragraph, yeah.
Yeah.
Could we be consistent and use the same language from the other policy, which explicitly states use of the racial equity policy and equity scorecard data?
Which one are you referring to?
Well, I'm looking at the access to instructional resources one right now, but the one for PD, and I've got the numbers confused, but whichever policy dealt with PD specifically had mention of the equity policy in the scorecard.
Do we want to focus on the PD one first then? If that's, maybe that'll be easier for us to work that way. Would you say, Matt, there it's listed twice? maybe along those lines, Anitra, but the paragraph in the PD one, the paragraph that's highlighted, third paragraph, considerations of professional learning, but we could also say considerations of instructional materials, right?
Yes.
That focus on racial equity, implicit bias, culture and climate, deeper learning strategies should be included in the planning process. Would that be a good general statement?
Yes, I
I'm
think
trying
so.
to, the racial equity policy, I'm trying to find a way to fit that in because that's up there with a whole list of other things. And if we can tie that all in, I think it may be good to have that common statement.
Can you add it on at the end of that highlighted sentence? Consideration of professional learning that focuses on racial equity, implicit bias, culture and climate, deeper learning strategies should be included in the planning process as stated in our racial equity policy, or as outlined in, or as whatever. And just kind of add that in there.
So here, let me put it in the chat and see if I can. So we're talking about add to policy 602 and 603 a uniform statement such as, oops. Sorry, I hit enter too soon. I didn't mean for it to all go out. I'm going to revise that real quick. In the planning process. About in accordance with the racial equity policy. All right, now the racial equity policy, are we talking about the JCPS racial equity policy? Because we have a separate racial equity policy up in policy 2. Or are we talking about our racial equity plan, the school racial equity plan, or the district racial equity plan?
I think it should be linked to our school. If we're talking about a PD plan, it should be linked to our school racial equity plan. That way we're aligning all of our documents.
So let's call it the school racial equity plan. And I'm going to put it like in lowercase because they change titles of things so often. So consideration of professional learning under the PD one, 60, I think I got my 602s and 603s backwards, but we could use this uniform statement, one for one and one for the other, either talking about professional learning or instructional materials that focus on consideration of professional learning that focus on racial equity, implicit bias, culture and climate, and deeper learning strategies should be included in the planning process in accordance with the school racial equity plan. Racial equity plan. So let's look at I think we're kind of coming to a consensus, maybe. I'm seeing some head nodding. Let's look at our original bylaws, policy 602 and 603. And I might be able to screen share here. I don't know if my document's so large. How many things do I have going here? No, I'm not going to try to screen share. There's too much. I've got too many windows open. But under 602, our selection of school materials, I think we should put that right at the, there's only, but right at the end of the first paragraph. And do the same thing with 603, put this in right at the end of the first paragraph. And one of them's for professional development, one's for instructional materials. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm not able to see the edit because it's a Word document when I open it. So I think it's like wanting me to open another Google Doc. So I can't really see as you're doing it.
Yeah, I'm not editing it right
Oh.
now. I put it in the chat, that exact.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So what I'm talking about is adding in that sentence. And what I can do is I can put those in and then send them in our minutes for the reading. All right, motion. All right, so what the motion to approve is to add the sentence that I put in the chat, add it into the appropriate relevant 602 and 603. That's keeping a focus on racial equity, and it's a emphasis on racial equity as part of the selection of instructional materials, which would do everything from software that we purchase to how we're investing.
$15,000 worth of novels, English
exactly.
novels.
Yeah. Which was Tessa and I had the conversation about the diversity of authors in that selection of novels. As well as our professional development in 603, which would be such as us spending the several $100s it took, I forget how much it cost to buy all those books for all our staff for our 2-month book study that we've had, as well as the other types of professional development investments. We have teachers who are getting paid stipend to go to specific equity training relevant specific to their subject areas as well. So
Dr. Averly counselors are doing the upcoming training college board on recruiting minority students for higher level courses, recruiting and retaining. So that type of professional learning.
And then next week there's that's perfect example. And then next week our math department and myself are going to a specific seminar on mathematics and for students of color. All right, motion.
Motion to approve.
Seconded. Any discussion, or do we have consensus? So this is a first reading then. So I'll put this in to the working document that you all will have. And then next, I'll keep this on an old business and we'll come back to it for a second reading before this revision is adopted into policy, okay? And it is 4:29. Just so you know, just as a reminder, if there are things you want added to the agenda that are appropriate for discussion among the SBDM Council, please make sure you reach out to me several days beforehand. I usually send out a reminder, about Monday or Tuesday of the week that council meetings are happening. So it's good to have the agenda as close to finished as possible. Thank you all so much for everything you do. See you next month.